Hey guys, this is Mitch with 5.CGI, and today we're going to go ahead and continue our basic tutorial series by talking about the 2D engine inside of Godot. So this time we're going to talk about the tile map. So we're going to go over what a tile map is, what a tile set is. We're going to talk about how to add tiles to your tile set and how to create a new single tile and a new auto tile, which is an awesome feature inside of Godot. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I'm sitting here in Godot, and first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to click create a root node. So we're going to need to create a 2D scene. We're going to need to right click here, add a child node, and type in tile map, and you'll see that we'll go ahead and add a tile map node. Now, what is a tile map node? Well, basically what it is the grid system that Godot uses to define what your 2D level is going to be. So over here on the right, you have this tile map resources or tile set resources here. And this is all of the resources used for you to draw out your tile map. Now, if you look over here, there's different types of modes here. You have square, isometric, and custom. Well, generally speaking, you're just going to use square or isometric, but square is your standard square grid, and isometric is a square grid that's offset by 45 degrees. Down here, we have tile set, and if we click on new tile set, you'll see that it creates a new object here, and we'll get there in about a few seconds. Compatibility mode is if you want compatibility mode with an earlier version of Godot. Center texture will actually center the texture, so it'll be in the middle of each tile versus like on the upper right-hand corner or anything like that. It's useful if you have like a flickering tile edges. Center cell clip UV. It'll actually clip the UVs on the tiles so that they have less flickering. Cell. This is the size of the quadrant of your cell, and I will show you guys this in a few seconds. You have your guys' customs transforms. You guys have offset the tile origin, which is where its origin is. So you see how when I put my my mouse over here, you'll see that the tile origin is the top left. So it'll be in this section. When you paint that tile, that'll be the origin of where it puts that tile. Versus if you were to change this to center or bottom left, it would be center or bottom left respectively. Collision, it determines if it has collision, if this tile map actually has collision, and we'll get there in a little bit as well. So now that we've created our new tile set, let's go ahead and click on it. You'll see that it says that we need to add a texture. Well, first, that means we need to get a texture. So what we're going to do is we will go ahead and open up our web browser and go to Google, and we're going to type in free pixel arts pack. There we go. And we're going to look around and see what we can find. I like to find the itch.io free game assets. I believe they have a pixel art assets. If I click on it. Yeah, so you can see here, we have all these free game assets that we can use for our projects. Now, some of them say you can't use them for commercial purposes, and some of them you can use them for commercial purposes. So I would make sure that I read them. So that way you're not, like if you look at this skeleton pack, you'll see if it tells you if you're allowed to use this. You see, you can use this art for personal or commercial use. So you just want to make sure that when you download these kinds of art assets, you don't want to use them if they're used for only personal use if you're going to be selling this game, because that's highly illegal. So if we go back to our back to our pixel art and we kind of scroll down, we're going to look, and I particularly like let's see, there was one that I liked. This one right here. So Peaceful Night Field is the one that I'm going to be going with. So if I click on that, you can see that it says here, this tile set is 8 by 8 pixels. They tell you that right here. It contains these different things. And they're saying, hey, I hope someone can get a use out of this. This is made by Trixie, if you look up here. So go ahead and follow her out on Twitter. But if you just click download now, you will see that it will ask you to donate. I've already paid for this, so I'm going to say no thanks. And then click download. And you can see it's going to pop you up a download. So you can hit OK. And once you have that and you extract it, it will look like this. So you'll see that you get a preview, a little note from the person, a coin, and what looks like the tile map itself, and their little color palette that they used to create this. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this. We are going to open up Godot and bring up that thing, and we're going to drag that in. So you'll see it gets dragged in right here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drag this over to the tile set to the open area here, and we're going to let go. And you'll notice that the tile sets are really blurry, and that's a big problem. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to change our import settings in Godot to make it more of a pixel art style. So what we'll do is we'll make sure we have this selected, and we'll come up here to the import, and we will change our preset to 2D pixels, and we will re-import that. And you'll notice that suddenly this looks way better. Now, if you remember from our instructions from the person who made this tile set, this needs to be on an 8x8 grid. So what does that mean? Well, when we start chopping this up, we need to chop these up in 8 pixels by 8 pixels, or else it doesn't make sense. So first, let's talk about what all this is. So if you look at this, we have new single tile, new auto tile, and new atlas. Now I'm going to talk pretty much about new single tile and new auto tile in this specific tutorial, and maybe we'll talk about atlas later. But if you go ahead and click on new single tile, you'll see that some options come up right here. You have this little click and drag, and you have this little grid here. So if I just click and drag, you'll notice that I can click and drag and select things to turn into an asset. So if I actually click on that and I click back on my tile map, you'll see that I now have this big block here. And if I click with the left mouse button, you'll see that it starts placing those down. Now, if I click with the right mouse button, you'll see that I am deleting them. But you'll also notice that that's not very great. That's not a good way of handling things, right? So if I were to go back in here, you'll notice that it's not perfect. You see how that doesn't quite match up perfectly? It's kind of off a little bit. This one's perfect, but this side's not. And the overall, dragging like this is not a good way of handling things. So if I were to drag over here, like that's just not a good way of handling things. So instead, if I go ahead and I click on this and I hit the trash can, and I click on this and I hit the trash can, if I click new single tile and I click on this little button here, it enables snapping to a grid. So you'll see if I click on that, you'll see that I have a grid here. And what you'll need to do is you'll need to click like this, and you can actually select a grid. Now, in my case, I already have it set up to have my offset as 8x8 here, and my step by 8x8. So if I were to change this back to what the defaults are, which I believe they're 64, you'll see that it looks something like this. So when I select this, it's one giant area. Whereas if I change this to 8x8, now it's the correct size for me to be able to use. You can see how when I zoom in, you can see how that matches up pretty well perfect. So if I select this, I have all these other options up here now that I've selected what my pixels are going to look like. So I have collision, which allows me to have collision inside of my game. Occlusion, which allows me to occlude foreground and background objects. And navigation, which allows me to use AI to navigate these tiles. So if I click on collision, and you can see here that there are different options here. So I can actually click on like rectangle, and I can select, and you'll see that it actually makes that into a collision object. And same thing with occlusion. If I were to select rectangle and I were to drag this, you'll see that it also selects that. Now you don't necessarily need collision and occlusion together. Remember, the idea is, and I'll put a graphic up to kind of explain what collision and occlusion is, but you just want to know that if you have collision, you don't necessarily need occlusion. It just depends on how you're trying to operate this. So now that I've selected one, let's go back to our region, and let's go ahead and select another one here, and we'll add in collision as well. And then same thing with this one. And we're going to add in collision as well. And that should... Oh, whoops. I actually need to do a new single tile. Whoopsies. So you click that, add in collision, select that, new single tile. Click, collision, click. Okay. And now let's do another one. I'm going to do all of these in this little grid here. Okay, so now that I have all of these done, what we can do is we can click on tile map and you'll see that I have all of these really cool tiles here. So now I can draw these tiles out and actually draw out what I want to create, right? So if I want to create a cool little running path, but you'll notice that these are really far apart. Well, that's where the cell size here comes in handy. So if I set this to 8 by 8, you'll notice that suddenly, which is what she said on her project page, right? She said that this was a 8 by 8 pixel. So if we set it to what she says, you'll see that everything matches up perfectly. So if we go ahead and draw some, some pathways here, let's do something like this, and then something like this. Let's get rid of that. And let's put in, let's see, that. You'll notice that this doesn't quite match up very well. So what if we try to find a way for it to match up? So you'll see that I went ahead and added a few tiles here just to kind of give me some more breakup. So you can see that we can actually use these to help break up how our thing's going to look. So if you see, I click here, you'll see now it kind of gives that nice little L-shaped, I guess you could say, to this. So if we go ahead and put this down like this, and then we grab our rotation one like this, and then we go ahead and drag this out, then let's go ahead and do this. You can see that we can get a pretty cool result here, right? And we need to fill in this little gap here. We got a really cool little corner piece here, but it doesn't quite match. So what we can do is we can hit X, and that flips all of them. If we hit S, that rotates it. So you see if I rotate it and I click, you'll see now it looks pretty decent. So what we're also going to do is we're going to go ahead and draw out a little tiny centerpiece. And actually I want this. I want that. I would like to have that, and that. And you can see now I got this nice little level here. But if we go back to our tile set and we click here and let's say we want to add some trees, right? So new single tile, right? We select this little region. We don't want collision because we don't want the user to hit it. So let's go new single tile and then do the same thing. And we don't want collision because again, we don't want the user to hit it. And finally, last one. Now, if we go back to our tile map, you'll see that once again, we have our trees. So we can click here and we can click here, just like that. And now we need to go ahead and do the same thing for this section, but this is kind of a pain in the butt, right? It's not a lot of fun to have to draw out all these tiles to handle all the stuff. So the Godot creators designed a thing called Autotile. So if we go ahead and click on Autotile, and you can see once again we have our little region selected here, we can select this section here. And you'll see that now we have all of these same features here, but also bit mask. And if we click on bit mask, it allows us to draw these red squares. And you'll see that how it operates is it uses this to hook up to other red squares to determine where it should be placing these tiles. So if you go ahead and put it like this, you'll notice what I mean in a second. So if I click on tile map and I scroll down until I find the tile set I'm looking for, which is this one, when I draw this out, Godot is going to try to do some math to figure out what I'm trying to build. So you'll see that if I do that, that doesn't look really cool, but if I connect them, you'll notice that it's starting to try to figure out what I want it to do. So if I draw this out like so, you'll see how it's attempting to build what I want. Now, it's not always perfect, so let's go ahead and take a look at our tile set and see what's going on. Okay, so after a little bit of a struggle here, I finally got it working a little bit, but what you have to do is you have to set up your bit mask like this. So the idea is how it's going to connect to each other, right? So in this case, like these three are going to connect together. So when these three are in a row, it'll figure itself out. When these three are in a row, it'll figure out how to connect these together. Same thing with these ones, if that makes sense. So if I now go ahead, I can kind of drag this out like this and fill it in, and you'll see that it continues building out this complex shape for me. So I don't have to actually go through the work of building it. I can just draw it out and it designs it. So that's the basis or the basics of the Autotiler system. Now, some other things that you could do is you could also try to auto-tile this as well. And a good exercise for you is to go ahead and auto-tile this and see if you can get it to operate as you would expect, right? So you could do if you click on these and you trash them, right? If we click on region and trash these out, you'll see that it goes ahead and deletes what you previously created, but you can come in here and trash all of these like so, and then go ahead and make an auto tile. So if I select a auto tile and I drag these out, and I include these as well, actually, you know what? Let me include all of this. So if we actually just include all of this, and we scroll in a little bit, and then we go ahead and add in bit mask, and then draw out our quick little bit mask here, and then let's say this, and then fill these in as well. Now, when we come in here and we go find that auto tile set, you'll notice that it is an absolute mess. But this is a good opportunity for you guys to go ahead and figure it out. So I want you guys to pause the video, take a look at this, and see if you can figure out what is possibly broken. So did you end up figuring it out? Well, this is what you would need to do. So you can see here, this is where these would connect, this is where these would connect, and this is where these connect. And you can see here, this is where these would connect to determine which ones, I guess, show up, right? So for instance, you can see here, this connects like this, and you can see here, this one is right here. You can see that it's looking for an adjacent tile here, and it's looking for adjacent tiles above it to determine that this is the proper location. All right, so now that we have that, we can actually go ahead and draw all this out. So you can see here, I've been kind of playing around with it and showing it off and playing with it. So if you click on tile map, you can see as I draw these out, it'll figure it out by itself. So let's continue drawing a little bit here like this. You can see this is an easy way to go ahead and create some pretty cool little levels. And if I go into my tile set and I go ahead and choose a new auto tile and I select this little section here, you can actually auto tile these pretty simple just by adding in your bit mask. And at this point, you pretty much know what to do, right? So you would just kind of drag these in like this. And it should, providing I'm not crazy, not work. And one of the hardest things to learn about auto tiling and Godot and things like that is you need to know what's best for an auto tile. So you can see I tried to make this into an auto tile, but it actually didn't work very well. And knowing what can be auto-tiled and what can't be auto-tiled is one of the things that you really need to learn as a aspiring game developer. So if I go ahead and drag these out and I add in a pillar like that, and let's go ahead and add in a nice little ladder. And you can see this is the basics of the Godot tiling system. And if I hit, remember, X to flip this, there you go. You have yourself a nice little environment that you can build and play inside of. All thanks to this nice free tile set. So that's all I have for you guys today. We covered auto tiling, we covered tile sets, we covered what a tile map is, and some of the knobs and dials that are on each of those options. We also talked about, you know, building a small level, and we honestly built a pretty cool little level here. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and you know, if you like this video, hit that like button, and you know, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button, because again, I'm here to make content for you guys, and I want to build stuff that you guys are interested in. So let me know if you have any suggestions or anything in the comments below, and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks again.